Lifting up our hearts to heaven, let us imitate the hierarchy of the age.
So first off, as I'm sort of getting this together, I will say, I could probably give 9 whole sermons on the epistle today, so I highly recommend that you go and read it and try your best to understand what that means. However, being that today is not about the epistle, we'll continue on. I figured that I would take it upon myself, seeing as I'm sure most of you haven't been in school for a while, that your math is rusty, so we're going to have a short math lesson, and you'll see how that sort of ties in. For those of you who are still in school and studying math, this is not an excuse to not pay attention. So, to begin, if we have, not to excuse the drawings, probably very good, but I hope that everybody can see this. Everybody can see this, correct? A couple balls with sticks in them. Those are apples. So if we have 4 apples, and I were to give them to 2 people, let's say person A, we have 2 altar boys in the front, so I'm giving 4 apples to Thaddeus and Conrad, and here they are, right? Perfect likenesses, I'll have you know. So, how many apples, to divide them evenly, would both Thaddeus and Conrad get? 2. Thank you. Very nice. Very nice. So, 2 apples each to divide them evenly. However, if I were to try to divide them evenly, and I gave Conrad 4 apples, how many apples does Thaddeus get? All right. So, what we have to sort of remember before we continue on with this lesson is one very important fact that we tend to always forget. And I will say this, I hope that you will let it sink in for a little bit. God is not human. Let that sink in. God became human. He sent Christ here who took on human flesh and had 2 natures simultaneously. He was both fully God and fully man, but God, the Trinity, all 3 persons are not human. And being that God is the creator of us, the creator of all things, he can do whatever he wants. We sing in the Tropar, especially on feast days to the Mother of God, that where God so wills, the order of nature is overthrown. God created our world literally out of nothing. And this doesn't mean that God was sitting somewhere looking at a great big ball of nothing and then melded the world out of it. No. From absolute emptiness, God pulled forth everything. So, going back to this, and please ignore the fact that the last time God gave apples to humans, we got kicked out of paradise. But if God has 4 apples and wants to give them to both Thaddeus and Conrad, how many apples did Thaddeus and Conrad get? Any guesses? 4. Who said that? That was an excellent guess. Awesome. Very nice. Because God gives equally to all of us. In the share of his grace, when one person gets some, somebody else doesn't get less. If God has one giant pie of his love for us, it's not evenly divided and all of us get a little sliver. We all get the whole pie. There's no endless amount. And it's something that we tend to forget about in the gospel reading this morning. In this look of the prodigal son, when one comes back, we are meant to see ourselves as both sons. The Father obviously is God, but we are both of these. Now it's very typical, leading into Lent, that we tend to think of ourselves constantly as the prodigal son. I have sinned, I am unworthy, let me go back to my Father and beg his forgiveness. And we understand the mercy of God. That all of this love has always been for us. And though we have squandered his love, that we have gone away from him, we are always accepted. It's not something to easily forget. However, we are also supposed to see ourselves in the other side. That when he comes and he goes to the Father and says, why does your other son, who completely disobeyed you, who squandered your gifts, why does he get good things? Why? To us, in very human nature, that's unfair. And I'm not going to say that it's not. It is. If one of us, if we continue with the example of Thaddeus and Conrad, if Thaddeus stole everything from the altar and then came back and said, "Can I still be an altar boy?" and I said yes, all of you would say that was horrifyingly unfair, correct? He stole from us. He ruined his inheritance. However, we are not God, and God is not human. When the eldest son says that this is unfair, the father does not say, "Yes, it is unfair," but that's just how it is. Because if we look at it sort of in a human context, right? If the inheritance was those 4 apples, and one son took 2 of them, ate them, and then threw the rest away, the other son's 2 apples now have to be divided between the 2 sons again, correct? So now there's only 2 apples remaining of the father's livelihood that have to be given to 2 sons again. The prodigal son returned. He still has to get an inheritance. He's still living off the riches of the father. But what we forget is that the father, in giving away 2 apples to one son, gave him 4, and the other one he still had 4 left. The whole inheritance was never missing. And the son that we find ourselves in, when we say, "This is unfair, God. Why have you given blessings to someone else who doesn't deserve them, and not given me my blessings? Obviously, in giving them blessings, you've taken mine away, God." But the father, in his ever-present wisdom, reminds the son, and I quote, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours." All this time, we, the son who stayed, have been living in the grace of God. All that God has is ours. And at the times that we find ourselves the prodigal, we are able to come back to the full grace and the love of God. But the times in which we are obedient to God, in which we feel that God's blessings are being given to other people, we have to wake up and recognize that we are constantly in this grace of God. We didn't lose it. We're just not awake and recognizing it. If the other son had to realize how wonderful it was to be in the presence of the Father by being in filth and squalor, and it literally says he came to his senses. He had to wake up and recognize what he was missing. The other son also has to wake up and recognize what he already has. Not what he is missing. What he is a part of every day. That this grace of God is endless. It is constantly bountiful. And that we, when we are not the prodigal son, have to recognize and be thankful for what we are already a part of all the time. For what we are already given. Recognize that. That God has given you your 4 apples, and that you will never run out of them. That no matter how many times somebody else has blessings that you think you don't have, you have them and more. You are always with the Father, and all that he has is yours. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Glory be to Jesus Christ.
Glory be forever.